Okay, everybody, welcome to the July 11th, 2011 work session. Work sessions are a more informal setting to update the council on business items. No votes will be taken on work session items. Tonight, there are 4 items on the agenda. Public comment is allowed that is germane to an agenda item. If you wish to speak, you are required to fill out a public comment card and turn it in to the city clerk staff. Public comment will be allowed for a total of 10 minutes per agenda item and no more than 2 minutes per person. Public comment will be heard at the beginning of each item. Once the item is called, no other public cards will be accepted. And also want to welcome Paul here. And it's nice to see a city attorney with a little bow tie. But just kidding. And, so if the city clerk will please announce the agenda.
Our first item is discussion of impact of the 2010 census on redistricting requirements for the city of Milton. Mr. Paul Fricke.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, I have, in conjunction with Ken Gerard, reviewed whether or not, in light of the 2010 census results, whether the City of Milton is required to go through a redistricting process. The reason this issue came up is because the results showed that several of the districts were disproportionate to the other districts. Notably, I believe the information showed that District 4 was significantly smaller than the other districts, while District 6 was significantly larger, as was District 5, but to a lesser extent. I've presented and provided the city with our opinion, a formal opinion on this, and I just wanted to summarize it for the council. You should have a copy. The general concept is that first there's a question of whether the local charter or ordinances require the city to go through a redistricting process, and the city of Milton does not have any such requirement. Georgia state law does provide the opportunity, but not a requirement, for the city to go through redistricting after the decennial census. But again, it's not required pursuant to state law. What we're left with then is whether or not the United States Constitution requires the redistricting process to go forward. And there's essentially 2 prongs that we looked at. First is just a general equal protection, what they call a one-person, one-vote standard. That basically looks to make sure that each person's vote has the same weight as another person's. Generally, if you have a larger district, then one person's vote may be considered less weighty as a person's vote in a smaller district. However, as you'll see from the conclusions that we've reached, and there's very clear case law that says if the elections for the districts occur at large, in other words, everybody within the city votes for within every district, then in effect, each representative, each of you, is representing the entire city. Therefore, no one district is having any particular overweight. Everybody votes for every member. Therefore, that the one person, one vote principle is not violated. And that applies notwithstanding the fact that there is a residency requirement for the candidates to reside within the district. Very clear case law, which we've cited, establishes that does not change the fact that as long as you're elected at large, there's no violation of that principle. There's also a requirement that you look, the Civil Rights Acts require that there not be an impact on minority voting. Based on the numbers that we have been presented, it does not appear that there is a substantial enough and concentrated enough minorities within the city that would require the city to go forward with a redistricting. So at this time, it is our conclusion and recommendation to you that there is no requirement the city go forward with redistricting on a legal basis. We're happy to answer any questions.
And I totally understand that legally, but if we wanted to redistrict just to balance things out, what would the process, what would we need to do? And
Generally,
and I say that not so much for us, those of us sitting here, but we've got some districts that are skewed pretty big compared to others. So for future council members and whatnot, it's not really, it may not be fair with the districts are different sizes as far as number of people. So what's your thoughts on that?
And let me certainly be clear that the fact that you aren't required to do it does not prevent the city from going forward with the process. There is a process by which typically the process would run through the state reapportionment office. They would provide assistance in drawing compliant, in this case there's not too much to be concerned about, but drawing the new district boundaries. They would go through, we would recommend that there are minimum requirements for notice. We would generally recommend that there also probably be above minimum requirements just to get buy-in from the public. That's obviously going to be the council's decision, but then follow the normal procedures that this board would adopt for resolution and ordinances.
And I kind of wanted to get a take on from the council what their thoughts are on this, Alan.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand the fact that we wouldn't have to redistrict because of the one person, one vote, based on the fact that we're all running at large. But there's two questions I have. District 6 is probably arguably the most racially diverse, and so therefore, if it is also the largest, would that not prevent people of different races from potentially occupying more than one slot on this board?
The numbers that I was provided, and I unfortunately don't have them immediately at hand, suggested that there wasn't a large enough population that if you divided any district into fifths, if we redrew the districts such that they were relatively equal, which is what the goal would be, that there wouldn't be a significant enough population that it would change the strength of a minority vote such that you couldn't draw a district that would suggest that a minority would have a much better opportunity to elect a representative of the board.
Well,
the council.
Okay, I get that no certain minority would have a better opportunity to elect someone because everyone's vote is the same. What about to provide more opportunities for those of other ethnic diversities or ethnicities to run for city council? Because right now, District 6 and arguably District 5, but the two districts are by far the most racially diverse areas of the city. And so if you draw the line so that District 6 is like it is now, and there's so many more folks of different races in District 6, then if you redrew them, would there be a better opportunity for those with other races to run for city council, not elect city council, but run for city council?
Okay, I understand the distinction that you've made. I think as a legal matter, it wouldn't impact because it looks at the ability to elect a representative, and if you're diluting the ability to elect by dividing the district up, I don't think as a legal principle the factors that are considered in evaluating a civil rights act violation would be violated. As a political or practical matter, that might be something that you may want to consider.
Okay. And then my second question has to do with the cost of redistricting. Is this just a matter of GIS, just redo everything, or is there a cost involved in being able to redistrict?
You can get significant assistance from the state office in terms if you provide them with the information on what factors you want to consider in the redistricting. They will provide you generally with the service of drawing 1, 2, maybe 3 options, as I understand it, and they will do that at no charge. You can get a certain number of 1 or 2 maps, full copies. Then they will provide copies at cost, which I don't think will be prohibitive. And so at that point in time, I mean, that's the cost. If you decide to hold additional meetings or go somewhere throughout the city outside of the city offices, and you have to rent space, there may be associated costs, but not a particular cost identified specifically with this product.
Okay.
Yeah, and having read our city's charter not too long ago, I don't think there's a requirement in the charter for us to redistrict.
Correct.
At specific points in time, but if there's a possibility that at some point in time in the future, the population shifts enough that we need to do that, I think I'd be in favor of just doing it when the census data comes out. I guess this wouldn't even happen except for once every 10 years.
That's when the new information would be revealed, at least officially.
So we could put it off for 10 years, and it's not too big of a deal. So. Okay.
Bert?
What would be the time frame that it would take if we were to go forward with it at some point?
My understanding is that at this point in time, the state offices are potentially backed up even through January to. Now we might be able to get meetings, but to get things onto approvals with the legislature, and that may be put off even further. So I mean, that there is a process ahead of that, but there's not an urgency.
Sure.
Because that's when we would have to get something in by now. Obviously, there's some back. You have to work backwards in terms of coming up with what the factors you want to have considered. Then once you have something from the state office approval, you tweaking, looking at whether public likes option A or B if you want to go that road. So you kind of look at what, and then
It's a fairly
there's
process.
4 to 6 months probably is a fair amount of time to say, and that is to, and then afterwards you do have to go through DOJ,
Yeah.
which is another potentially 60 days, 120 days process.
Okay, thank you.